Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome to our spring wholesale virtual tasting. I'm Michael Torino, the president here at Ridge, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. We have a full slate of 7 wines to taste through today. So we'll do our best to keep this tight and really focus and make it useful for the key selling points on these wines and how to drive success with them in your market. The wines and tasting order for today will be the 2025 Heringer Chenin Blanc, 2024 Estate Chardonnay, 2024 Three Valleys, 2024 East Bench, 2024 Paso Robles, 2024 Geyserville, and we'll finish out with the 2023 Estate Cabernet Sauvignon. Quick housekeeping, use the chat to say hi and make general comments. We love to see what's going on in there. But please, if you're asking questions, use the Q&A function. We'll do our best to hit as many live as we go through the tasting. Before we jump in, I want to quickly recognize the team out in the field. Christina's joining from Arizona today with the Southern Glazers signature team. Tom is in the Mid-Atlantic with the Winebow teams from Maryland, Delaware, and DC. Maggie's in Chicago with Maverick, and Brian is in New Mexico with the Southern Glazers signature team there. So great to have you all join us today. I also want to extend a quick welcome to our newest distribution partners joining us for the first virtual tasting for them, Classic Beverage in Colorado and the Wine Merchant in Pennsylvania. Excited to be working with both of you. Welcome to the tasting. Also, it's been a busy week for us. We were just in New York celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Judgment of Paris tasting. We did a vertical of Montebello going back to the 71. Pretty special and a great reminder of what these wines can do over time and how well they age. It was really one of the most memorable wine tastings events I've ever been at. You'll also see the Judgment of Paris anniversary featured in our spring newsletter, along with a dedicated landing page on our website and a great video of John Olney speaking to the significance of that historical tasting. That legacy, will be a big part of what we taste today. Let me introduce the panel for today's tasting. First, we have John Olney, our head winemaker and CEO. Michael Bairdsmith, assistant winemaker at Lytton Springs, joining us for his first wholesale virtual tasting. So we'll get to know Michael a little bit in a couple of minutes here. David Gates, our senior vice president of vineyard operations. Gentlemen, thank you all for being here. We'll keep this moving. We'll jump right into the wines, starting with something new for most of you. So the first wine that we'll taste today will be our 2025 Heringer Chenin Blanc. And Michael, I'm going to lean on you for this wine for a couple of reasons. First, I want everybody to meet you. You've been with us for over 12 years now, but the first time on a virtual tasting. So I want people to get to know you. And this is also a wine that's made at the Lytton Springs Winery. So who better to speak to it and let people know about it?
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, no, this was an exciting one for us to tackle. We started making a few different wines, including like a Teraldigo from Heringer Vineyard. It is incredible growers, a great family. They're doing incredible work. We loved everything that they were doing, and they gave us the opportunity to do some of their beautiful Chenin. And we jumped on the opportunity. Our first finish was 2024. The fruit was fantastic. It was our freshman effort, so we really tinkered with it. We're like, what are we going to do? Let's see about doing some of this in stainless steel, some of this in oak. Let's do a little bit of skin contact time, see what that does to the wine. Let's pick a few different ripeness levels and see what really works for us. So we did a lot of tinkering. We did a small amount that we bottled. It was very good, but in the end, we made a few major decisions based on just that first year. Number one was we liked the effect that a slightly less ripe Chenin gave us. Some of the riper stuff had a little bit of a melon quality that was nice, but not really what we loved. Some of the less ripe fruit was giving us more tropical lemon verbena, some floral notes that were really pretty. And then we tinkered also with oak, a lot of neutral oak, very little new, and mostly stainless steel. And in the end, we're like, we really love the stainless steel. It was bright, vibrant, beautiful, and showing some of that really pretty Chenin varietal quality. So in 2025, we did 100% stainless steel just for a few months, and bottled it just as is. We think it's pretty gorgeous. If you guys have some in your glass, I recommend giving it a little swirl and sniff. I opened mine about an hour ago. Sometimes it'll have a little reductive quality that I don't find unpleasant, but it blows off with time. But really showing pretty on the nose, and there's a minerality, it's sort of dustiness you can smell from the soil. I don't know. It's just pretty beautiful. Chenin in California, I mean, it's been around forever, for years and years. In California, anyway, it was more of a workhorse white wine. Obviously in like Middle Noir, Loire, appellations like Vouvray and Sauvignon, it's been around forever. South Africa, it's pretty dominant, and it's been in
And
California forever. But yeah,
yeah, and so this one's coming from Clarksburg, and I know,
Clarksburg, yeah.
yeah, not everybody's familiar with Clarksburg. So tell
It's
us,
kind
yeah,
of,
where and
yeah, it's in Yolo County. People don't know where that is necessarily. If you know where UC Davis is, it's kind of that's where I went to school. That's I didn't study wine. That's where Yolo County is, just a little south of Sacramento, south and west. This here, sorry, Clarksburg is like the very southernmost point of Yolo County, um, and it is hot during the day and cool at night. It's kind of a beautiful little microclimate. If you've been through Yolo, if you've driven from Sacramento to the Bay Area during the summer and you get stuck in Davis or Dixon, and it's scorching hot during the day and 95 degrees at night, it's not like that in Clarksburg. There's a nice little effect coming from the Sacramento San Joaquin River Delta that cools the place down at night. So it isn't scorching hot all day long. It's got a nice diurnal shift, but it's pretty comparable to Sonoma County as far as heat. A bit drier though, certainly in the spring. And it's just a sweet spot for, oddly enough, Chenin. I think Chenin's kind of putting Clarksburg on the map. They grow everything up there at Heringer, except for Zinfandel, ironically. And everything they grow is pretty fantastic. But Chenin's really been shining coming out of Clarksburg.
fantastic. And
Yeah.
you mentioned it earlier. We made a vintage in 2024. We sold it DTC only. It was in the
Hmm.
wineries and briefly online, and it sold incredibly fast. I mean, Chenin Blanc is certainly having a bit of a renaissance right now. So we decided to make a little more this year. And there's not much of it out there in the wholesale world. It went to most of our markets this year, but it's something we're excited about. I mean, obviously we have the Estate Chardonnay every spring. We'll taste that wine next. We have the Grenache Blanc in the fall, but Estate Chardonnay is extremely limited and really kind of goes out to selective accounts and sommelier-driven accounts. But this gives us an option to kind of come in with a white at a by the glass price point for a higher end by the glass, or kind of go to a little more esoteric of a list. So we're super excited about this. And John, I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on this and what where you are at on this wine.
Yeah, I mean, Chenin is, the classic reference obviously is from the Loire. For me, this sort of follows suit in being a bit more Californian style. I mean, which makes sense. That's where it's being grown. So a little rounder, a little more plush on the palate. I think it's and it's interesting. I don't think people realize that Chenin, like Michael said, has been grown in California for over 100 years. It's always been lurking in the background, but given how much Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc is made, it sort of gets overlooked. So, like you said, I mean, it's sort of getting a little more attention, and I think attention it deserves.
Hey, John, I got a question for you. When did you start seeing Chenin as a varietal in California? I can't think of anything really from before the late 90s.
Well, I mean, David, you probably could comment better than I, but I mean, we have we work with a vineyard, even in Russian River where it's sprinkled in amongst some of the red grapes. I mean, Chapelet has been making it for a long, long time.
It just
Yes,
came in
started in the 70s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we go. Somebody will know.
Yeah,
There
Jacob.
you go.
Yeah, Jacob, who works for Chapelet, is weighing in 67. He knows it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Nice.
And they might have been the first to actually call it varietal. I'm not sure. That would be something for Jacob to let us know.
So perfect. We'll end up moving on to the next wine, just to keep on schedule and on pace here. But this is really exciting. I know the team's really excited to sell this out there in the market. It's Ridge. It's kind of unexpected. It's a little different. It's a nice gap on a lot of wine lists that you can take this to, and kind of a fun retail item in the right place. And I think people really enjoy having this wine out there. And then we'll move into the next wine, and we'll go to our 2024 Estate Chardonnay. And John, if I could ask you to kind of lead the discussion on this one.
Sure. Well, hello everyone. Yeah, 24 Estate Chardonnay from the Montebello Vineyard. Montebello up in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Spring weather can be pretty windy, can be pretty rough, and we did have some of that uneven weather in the spring, which limited the crop a bit. So I guess you can read into that limited availability as well. But I think in part because of a slightly smaller crop, the grapes, when we got into August and had some warm weather, they ripened pretty quickly. And we were picking this, I think, in the first week of September. So, and I think it really exemplifies what's kind of sort of the magic of growing Chardonnay at Montebello is there's enough warmth so you can get the grapes sort of fully ripe. And I think, when we're successful, we sort of ride that little line between having some nice, really nice fruit, a certain amount of unctuousness, but still with that nice acidity and that minerality that really balances out the wine and keeps it nice and fresh. So I've had the wine a couple times recently, and I think it's actually showing really, really well. Although, certainly with another 6 to 8 months, I think it's just going to be that much more better incorporated. Of course, unlike I guess everything we were talking about in terms of the approach with the Chenin Blanc is sort of the opposite with our Chardonnay. Here we take a much more traditional Burgundian approach. So this is, these grapes are going to be whole cluster pressed. They sit overnight, and then we stir up the lees. We send it to barrel for barrel fermentation. It's all natural yeast. Then we just stir the lees and wait for malolactic to happen naturally, and combine the various different blocks and bottle it, usually after about a year of aging. So I think it's definitely a successful Chardonnay and very, I think, exemplary of the vineyard.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, our Estate Chardonnay, it's always structured but not heavy. It still carries that acid and has that ability to age, and is really kind of one of the unique Chardonnays in California. And everybody likes to use that word, but it truly is. It kind of walks that spot. You mentioned the limited availability. Unfortunately, that's just the case with Ridge Chardonnay from Montebello. There's not much of it. We always get asked for more from pretty much everybody, but this is really the wine that you take to your top Ridge accounts, and you put on the right wine lists, and it's it kind of does its thing.
Yeah, and to your point, that's we had a few vineyard blocks that of Chardonnay that unfortunately we lost to disease, most specifically to Pierce's disease. And David can correct me, but I think about 4 years ago we started replanting some of these, and we're going to see some of the first fruit from those vineyards come online. So this year, so in the next few years, we should be able to maybe meet the demand a little better.
Yeah, kind of get back to where we were, David. That's a good segue to you. You're going to make people very happy if you tell them we're going to meet the demand on Chardonnay.
Well, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I'd rather underpromise and overdeliver, right? I will say one thing about our Chardonnay is, and I'd say it has to do with the Santa Cruz Mountains. It is a magical place. It's the only place in California, I think, where you can grow Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Cabernet, and have world-class wines coming from all three of those varieties. We don't do any Pinot. I think we're facing the bay, so we're a little too warm for that. But our Chardonnay, it sings, and other Santa Cruz Mountains Chardonnays equally very nice. It's like has all that bright acidity. So yeah, we're excited to get more Chardonnay in the ground.
Yep, absolutely. And we have a question on the Chardonnay. It's kind of a couple part question, so I'll sort of piece it out a little bit. But it's a great question. So the first part is, can you speak to the differences between the Chardonnay parcels and the red grape parcels at Montebello in terms of soil exposure elevation?
Sure. Most of our Chardonnay is planted at or just above the inversion layer. So that's anywhere from 1,350 feet to about 1,800 feet. And again, that's facing the bay. So they get some fog that will sit in, but it also gets cooler during the night than it does up on top. But surprisingly, one of our top wines, top blocks of Chardonnay is all the way up on top at Lone Tree, on the north-facing slope of Lone Tree, and that's at 2,600 feet, almost 2,600 feet. So go figure, you can grow it anywhere, but what's really important is that it faces the sun in the morning and not the afternoon. So, eastern or eastern or northern slopes are better for Chardonnay. And if we have a strong outcropping of limestone, which is kind of scattered throughout our Montebello vineyards, the Chardonnay really likes that, and that really keeps the acidity in the wine very, very nicely.
Yeah, makes total sense. And then the second part to this question, which I think is actually a really, really cool part of the question, are there vintages that are challenging for Montebello that end up being great for Chard and maybe not so great for the red varietals, or vice versa?
That's a good question.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, generally, I think they usually follow each other. In other words, let's take 2000, the vintage we just went through, 2025, which was a very long and a very cool vintage. And in both the reds and the whites, we have wines that are a touch lower in alcohol, that have a little bit more finesse and austerity to them. Whereas, if you look at 24, or certainly, if you went back, say to 17 or 18, where, you sort of have lower yields and more kind of a structured, fuller wine. I think you see that in both the reds and the whites. I'm sure there's exceptions that I'm not thinking of, but in general, that's been my experience.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of, John and Mike, is that Chardonnay doesn't like rain. It's not quite as bad as Zinfandel, but there have been a few vintages. 2011 was one of them, where the Chardonnay, our Chardonnay was not quite ready to pick when the rains hit. So we ended up having to intervene quite a bit to make sure that it didn't rot out before we could be able to dry it out and get it a little bit riper and pick it. With the Cabernet, we didn't have to do anything. It just kind of dried off in the wind and sailed along. That 11 Chardonnay was really nice too. So it's just that we didn't pick as much as we might have wanted to because of rot.
Sure. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, and probably a topic we could talk about for hours. But it's a fun one, definitely. We'll move on from the Chardonnay now. We'll move on to the 2024 Three Valleys. And Michael, I'll kind of come back to you on this one. And it's really an interesting wine for us, right? It's our largest production wine. But it's also where we meet most people, right? A lot of people, this is their first introduction to Ridge, and we're either going to get them in and they're going to, eventually trade up and drink some of our single vineyards, if we hook them. So it's an important part of what we do to kind of get out there in a broad manner. So, I know you have your hands in this wine every year. It's, primarily made at Lytton Springs. So would love to hear you kind of talk about it and how, maybe making this wine versus one of our single vineyard wines differs.
Well, that's the biggest difference. I mean, we're, you Google our name and it comes up as a, exceptional single vineyard wine since, 1962. We do a lot of single vineyard wines. That's our focus. We feel like single vineyard wines really express fruit in unique ways, and every vineyard has its own personality that comes through in the bottle. And then there's the Three Valleys, which is the exception to our rule. It's not single vineyard. It's multiple vineyards. But we absolutely love this wine. It is no slouch. We often talk about it as like a winemaker's wine. While we love everything we make, this is usually the one that, on release is the one I'm taking home. That and the Chardonnay. It's funny, we followed this after the Chardonnay. Those are the two wines we probably consume the most here at the winery. Just because they're so ready to drink right on release. They don't really require much aging. And it's a beautiful wine. What's really important to me that I want to emphasize about this is we're not treating this wine any differently from anything else we make. Honestly, we don't know what's going into this wine until after the fact. We pick all our various lots the way we do. A lot of hand-picked fruit, a lot of organic fruit, a lot of estate fruit, some outside growers as well. We ferment it on its natural yeast. We do no additives. The occasional tartaric acid or something that we would disclose on the back label. And then it's barrel aged just as the rest of our wines are. In 200-liter barrels for 12 to 14 months. At the end, we decide, okay, is this wine going into our Lytton Springs, Geyserville, Pagani, one of our other wines that we do single vineyard bottlings of? Or is it more approachable in its youth? Some of those single vineyard wines, many of them, I mean, all of them really are designed for ageability. And if we have a certain lot within a vineyard that isn't showing us the ageability, and maybe just sort of presenting as something that's drinkable in its youth, and then it doesn't go into the main blend, it goes into our Three Valleys. And that's how we assemble that wine. And so the end result is an amalgam of like all these different appellations and different vineyards, and a lot of wine that's very approachable and drinkable when it's young. And it's year after year, it's I think pretty fantastic. And the 24 was no exception. It's a great vintage. 23 was a really cool one. We were waiting a month for things to ripen later than usual. 24 came around, and it was kind of a Goldilocks vintage, and we love everything that came out of it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, I'm just tasting it now. I mean, it's, Three Valleys, in my opinion, year after year just gets better and better. The fruit is just really impressive in it. There's structure to it. The tannins are really nice and welcoming.
Yeah, and it's a pretty serious wine for kind of an introductory wine for Ridge. If you're introducing people to Ridge, this is a good representation of what we do. It's no slouch.
No, not at all.
No.
It's, I think the value that this wine offers for an entry point wine, the value and the authenticity, it is rich through and through, really goes a long way. And, for our sales teams out there, I mean, this is, kind of a start here wine. This is what they go out with. This is what they place by the glass. This is, our most broadly distributed wine, and, a great representation of Ridge.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah. Yeah, we're always very proud of this. We give a lot of attention to this wine every year. People, it's not a cast off or anything. It gets just as much love as the rest of our wines do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's rare for an entry point wine for most wineries. There's usually corners that are cut or different approaches to making it than we take.
Yeah, wine.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really good point. That these are still all of our own grapes. These come from the vineyards that we work with, and the whole idea of Three Valleys in the first place was for it to be sort of a tool for us to maintain the high quality of our single vineyards. Because if there's a block within, say, Lytton Springs, where maybe it wasn't quite as successful as we hoped for in that given vintage, it's still good. That's kind of what we make Three Valleys out of. So it's good fruit, and it's stuff that we're growing or is being purchased for other ATP wines.
Yeah, and that's a great point. It's, intentionally, it's fruit with intention. It's brought in as either one of our own single vineyards or ATP wines that ends up in this. It's not, bulked out fruit that we make a wine with.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. So we'll move on to the first of our single vineyard Zins. The next two that we'll taste back to back. This is always one of kind of the funnest things for me because they're both 100% Zin. We'll do the Paso Robles first, and then go to the East Bench. And 100% Zin, two different parts of California, and two wildly different wines. Dave, if we can maybe have you start us off with the Benito Duzzi Ranch Paso Robles.
Sure. So Paso, that comes from down just south of the town of Paso Robles, right off the freeway. It's a beautiful vineyard planted in 1924 by Benny's parents. They bought it, actually. The vines are in the ground in 1924. And the Duceys had a boarding house in Templeton, and they bought this vineyard so that they could make a little bit of wine, and it would be available, under the table for their boarders. They've been farming it ever since. Benny started farming it when he was 11 or 12, when his older brothers went off to World War II, and he was very much a man of the land. He loved that place. And farmed it up until he died. His nephew, Mike Ducey, and his family are farming it now. We also source some of our grapes for our Grenache Blanc from the Ducey family down there. And I love this wine. It's an alluvial plain off the Salinas River, but the soil is all washed up from the hills, right by the river. It's got lots of limestone in it, but it's deep soil with some stones in it. The vines are quite large. They're spaced old school, right? 10 by 10. They will irrigate in a dry year in the winter time, but throughout the summer it gets no rain. It typically gets ripe right about the same time we just start picking up in Sonoma. So we pick the grapes, truck them all the way up to Montebello. We've been doing that since the first year was 1967, and then 76 on. We've been doing that every year, and the wine kind of makes itself. It seems to be kind of quintessential Paso Robles Zin for me. So it's a full wine, right? The alcohol is this year, in a warm year, 2024. The alcohol is up there for us a little bit, just under 15%, and but it carries it really nicely. So it fills your palate and your mouth, but the tannins are soft and sexy, and it just kind of slides down and gets you ready for another sip. So I love this wine. It has actually ages fairly well if you like to sit on your Zins a bit. So yeah, it's close to my heart.
Yeah, it does age well, but I'll also say this is probably my favorite of our wines that I like to drink on release. It's rich, it's broad, it's fruit driven. Like, it's just really enjoyable on release, but it certainly does age well too. I wouldn't say it doesn't. I just love it, right out of the gate.
And it's kind of, California is it's barbecue time all year round. Sorry about that, East Coast and Midwest, but it comes out in the spring, and that's perfect for, as you start up your barbecue, it goes with a lot of different foods.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's it, for me, obviously being in South Florida, when I get this in the spring, I'm drinking it all summer long. My allocation doesn't last too long. It goes pretty quick. We have a question coming in, Dave, on sticky tannins. What are sticky tannins?
Oh, God. So that there's a fellow that was in our lab, Jim Kennedy, back in the 90s. And he went on to get his PhD and he studied tannins, I think partly because he got very much interested in that when he was working in our lab. He worked with another student that developed a test that didn't catch on in the industry, but basically it used some enzymes in our saliva to grade tannin qualities. And basically, he came up with this term stickiness. So more persistent tannins that are not, but are not the Grenache tannins that are they're grippy, right? There's a lot of tannin to Grenache, but it's not very sticky. Mataro doesn't have a lot of tannin, or Mourvedre, but the tannin that it does have is quite sticky. Petit Syrah has a lot of tannin and it's very sticky. So it's the persistence of the tannin. It's how you feel it on your tongue. And it's basically, we also kind of refer to it as complex anthocyanins, as opposed to simple anthocyanins that tend to really coat your tongue. And yeah, I'd say persistence might be a better term for it. But yeah.
I like sticky, actually. That's the right term. And John, Dave says this wine makes itself. Is that accurate since you have your hands in it?
Well, I mean, look, it's what's magical about Paso is when you think of Zinfandel, I mean, it's quintessential, right? It's this seductive sort of red raspberry fruit. It's aromatic. But what's really, I think, quite unique about the Doozy Vineyard is that, yes, it's a hot climate. And usually what our challenge in that sort of a context is that, yes, we get this really nice, ripe, round, delicious fruit, but you do it sort of at the expense of acidity. So the wine just feels a little flabby. But part of the magic of the Doozy Vineyard is it still maintains this great acidity. And that actually does make the wine a lot easier to make, because you're not trying to sprinkle in acid and try to get it into balance. The grapes are perfectly balanced. And so yeah, in general, we bring it in, it's a natural fermentation, and we just kind of let it do its thing.
Fantastic. And we'll for the sake of time move on to the next wine, but I will remind everybody out there that we do have a tasting room in Paso now. So if you're heading out, please come and see us there. We would love to host you. And we'll move up to Sonoma for the next wine for East Bench. And Michael, if I can come back to you, and this is a wine made at Lytton, and kind of get your take on East Bench Zin for us. 100%
Absolutely.
Zin, different place.
That's right. Another 100% Zinfandel. It's funny we talk about these old vine blocks that we use where we're doing field blends that are Zinfandel based, but have a lot of Petit Syrah and Carignan and other complementary varieties. And then we've got our East Bench, which is neither a field blend nor old, although it's getting up there. Dave, if I'm not mistaken, planted in 2000. I think our first harvest was 2003,
Yeah.
and I think our 06 was our first bottling of East Bench. And I've tried that older East Bench, and it's held up beautifully. I mean, there's something about this site that's there it is. This is photos of East Bench. Really rich soils. It was a cattle grazing land before it was planted to these vineyards. So it's fertile ground. Zinfandel, and John, I think you'll agree, especially on some benchland, really needs fertile soils. The benchlands in the Dry Creek Valley can sometimes be challenging to grow Zinfandel on, if they're not fertile enough. And some people often think, oh, you want to stress vines, and yes, you do, but having good healthy soils for Zin, from what I've seen, has been nothing but beneficial for Zinfandel. So we planted a few of our favorite clones of Zinfandel up on this benchland that's part of our estate, just adjacent to our Lytton West Ranch. There are 8 blocks. Wait, we've got 9 now, don't we?
8.
8. Okay, still just 8. Okay.
Yeah.
Planted this Zinfandel, and It has been a vineyard. Right behind me working in the lab is Mauro Maldonado. I'm not going to bring him out here because he'll be embarrassed, but he's been working very hard at making this vineyard successful. It's relatively younger Zinfandel, so it tends towards higher yields. It has been through a lot as far as it's organically farmed, and one of our first organic wines that or I shouldn't say organic wine, I should say wine from organic grapes that we produced I shouldn't say the year though, because that's one of our quiz questions, isn't it, Murphy? All right, I'll leave that alone. A number of years ago. And the challenge of farming grapes organically is really emphasized in this ranch. We can't just spray things to get rid of pests. We have to introduce a lot of organic farming practices that are challenging and labor intensive. And I feel like that has lent itself to the personality of this vineyard and this wine. It is very structured, very interesting, robust, serious Zinfandel for a 100% Zinfandel block that's relatively young. And year after year, it's some of the first grapes we pick every year. So it gets our full attention at the beginning of harvest, and we're always excited to see what's coming off of the vines every harvest. And we're always just so impressed with the quality of the wine that results from these vines. I love this wine. Again, it's another one that drinks really well in its youth, doesn't need a lot of aging. Although the 24 I tried just earlier, and it is structured. It is very serious. I could see this, kind of being more on par with our Lytton and Geyserville as in needing maybe a few years to really come around and express itself properly. But yeah, it's a serious and beautiful Zinfandel. It's often surprising to learn that it's 100% Zin.
And that's the first thing when I took a sip and kind of was just scribbling some notes here, the first thing I wrote was structured.
Yeah.
It is really a big structured wine.
Yeah, that is some rich texture.
Yeah, exactly. And, we have a question coming in and, why is it so dark and structured and serious?
I don't know. There's no Petit Syrah out there.
Yeah.
That's what you would normally attribute it to. But no, it's just it's a very well maintained vineyard, perfectly balanced, meaning it's not overcropped, so it's not going to be thin. It's not undercropped, so it's going to be out of balance, year after year. Mauro and Dave do such great work with this vineyard that it's just sort of the magic of the work they're doing. I think part of it has been a challenging vineyard to farm. It is organic, and therefore the vine mealy bugs and other nematodes and pests of the world are loving it, and we've had to fight it, and it's had to fight. And I think maybe the challenges that vineyard's gone through has given it that personality where it's a little more structured. That's a little woo, I know, but
well, I mean, I would also add that for me, the difference that you're seeing there in the color and just the overall character between these two wines coming from the same grape varietal is, I think it's testimony to why Zinfandel is so well adapted to California. You plant it in two different places and you get two different wines. I draw a line, for example, between how Zinfandel is being expressed in these two vineyards to Burgundy. If you have, you can have a wine from Nuit Saint-Georges, and you can have right next to it a wine from Chambolle. And on the one hand, you get this darker, more structured version of Pinot, and then you get to Chambolle, and it's all aroma and delicacy and a lighter color. Same grape, 10 miles apart. So.
Yeah, and one question did come in on the chat that I'm kind of seeing as it's scrolling here. That's interesting and a great question. From an oak perspective, barrel treatment between East Bench and Paso, it's extremely similar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, these are again, this is all American oak. They're being raised in the same coopers, same toast level, and both about 15% new oak. So yeah, it's a really good comparison because really the only thing that's different is the microclimate in the soil.
Yeah, and that's another question that came in kind of just hits on that here as well. And, Dave, I'll kind of ask you this one. Is it correct to think of East Bench as part of Lytton Springs, or is it distinct enough geologically or from a microclimate perspective to be considered kind of its own thing?
So microclimate, no, it's this, it's up on the bench. So that means that maybe it doesn't get quite as cool at night than the rest of the vineyard, down below it. But yes, there is a big difference between Lytton Springs and East Bench. So Lytton Springs has basically 5 soil types in it, including one that is the same as East Bench. East Bench is like Geyserville; it's like one soil type. So what you're seeing is that soil type, which is an old kind of eroded clay loam soil that has been lifted up from the valley, as opposed to some of the other ones that are more alluvium based at Lytton Springs. I think that's the biggest difference, and it's 100% Zin, which is a whole different expression. Another neat thing between East Bench and Paso is, if you look at the gross heat summation, the growing degree days of the two sites, they're almost the same as well. It's just they get there very differently. As we talked, Paso is very hot in the day and gets very cool at night. Benny's Vineyard sits in the Templeton Gap. East Bench, up on the bench, it gets warm, but not quite as warm unless we have one of those nasty heat waves. It doesn't get as hot as it in the day, quite as it does in Paso, but it's a little bit warmer at night, and that makes all the difference in tannin development and expression of the fruit and tannin in the wine.
Excellent. And we have one question, Dave, before we move on to the next wine. What's the extra expense of organic farming? We talked about East Bench kind of being the first organic vineyard that we did, and we've now spread it really to all of our estate wines, but what's the extra expense there?
Yeah, so when we switched over to farming organically, we basically had to do 2 things. One was we used mechanical weed control instead of spraying for weed control, and that's the biggest expense. So you're spending between $1,000 and $2,000 an acre to do weed control, especially in a wet year like this year seems to be. Where if you're doing herbicides, you're spending a couple $100 an acre. It's a little bit more now because, of course, everything's more expensive, but labor's a lot more expensive too. On the mildew side, in California, we worry about powdery mildew. If you do your canopy management correctly and grow your vines right, you don't have to worry really about much else in terms of diseases of the vines. So with mildew, it's basically, you spend the same amount of money, maybe a little bit more, but it's more hours from your men and your people and your equipment. But the chemical cost is a lot less. So you're not using systemic fungicides that can last 2 or 3 weeks. You're using sulfur basically, or some biologicals that last 5 to 7 to maybe 14 days. So that's it. It's just more intensive.
Yeah, and Kyle, he always shares that chart that shows the growing season, and to me, it just speaks, visuals, because you see the one, conventional treatment, and then, like you said, 4 or 5 months later, they go back, and then for the organic, it's like every, 4 weeks, there's back out there doing it again.
Yep. Yeah.
Great. So we'll move on from Paso and East Bench and head over to Geyserville next, and I'll ask John to take us there. I haven't seen the results of the poll come through yet on what the preference was for Paso or East Bench, but I know Murphy will drop that in the chat. It's been interesting to watch the polls today. Chenin and Estate Chardonnay are split 51%, 49% in the favor of Chenin. Most people, I'm proud of our team. We've done a good job because most people got the 1962 answer and the 2011 answer right. And I see the poll just came up right now. So 66-34 East Bench versus Paso. So fun. It's a new little wrinkle with the polls and quizzes today. And then John.
Diving into Geyserville, of course, this is one of the longest running wines that Ridge has made, really the longest running, except for Montebello. Our first Geyserville goes all the way back to 1966. And when we talk about, I mean, we just came off of two of the very few Zinfandels we make, which are 100% Zin, and here we're swinging all the way to the other side. So this is classic, about as classic as you're going to get of a field blend. And one of the unique aspects of the field blend at Geyserville is that instead of Petite Syrah being the sort of primary, secondary grape, at Geyserville, it's Carignan. So this wine has almost 20% Carignan in it as part of the field blend. And it's one of the things that I think contributes to the more, I think, sort of elegant character of Geyserville, and something that really makes it such a unique expression of Zinfandel. Geyserville is, we have it next to, we taste it blind next to Lytton Springs quite frequently. And, almost every year what we see is in Geyserville a little bit more of that red fruit, a little bit more perfumed, a bit softer in terms of the tannin profile. You get to Lytton Springs, you're looking at a darker wine where Petite Syrah is a bigger component in the field blend. So it's really, one of the things that's so interesting also about Geyserville, you could say the same thing about Lytton Springs, is we get a lot of people, especially in the industry, will ask us, how in the world do you guys keep selling Zinfandel? We can't sell Zinfandel. And what I tell them is, we don't sell Zinfandel. We sell Geyserville. Because, it's really, this wine is a lot more about the vineyard, and sort of the grape varietals kind of take back seat. And one of the really magical things about Geyserville is that, yes, it's terrific to enjoy right out of the gate. I mean, I think the 24 is tasting terrific. But this is a wine that you can age for 20 years easily. And it's going to evolve and just turn into a really magical tasting experience. And when you look at it that way, if you look at it, if the consumer looks at it and says, gosh, this is a $50 Zinfandel, I'm not paying $50. Well, if you look at it that way, but if you look at it as this is a $50 bottle of wine, which delivers the complexity, the ageability, and the overall experience, that's the equivalent maybe of wines, Cabernets that are 3 times the price. When you look at it that way, it's a value. So,
Yeah.
but I think the 24 was really a successful vintage. I mean, it kind of ticks all the boxes in terms of fruit, the mouthfeel, the concentration, and again, that great acidity. So overall balance should be one that will do well in the cellar over quite a bit of time.
Yeah, and John, you kind of touched on, 2 real big things there for me that I think, make Geyserville so special. I mean, the heritage behind it is truly history in a bottle. We'll be celebrating its anniversary next year. And there's very few wines that have been made this long in California. That's a huge piece of it. And then the other part is just the value that this delivers when you take, the concept of it's a Zinfandel out of it, it's Geyserville. And yes, you can put this up against wines, that are 3 or 4 times the price often, and this is a much better wine.
Yeah. Yeah, no question about it.
Yeah, agreed.
I think, the 24 for me, tasting it young it might be, the best Geyserville I can remember.
Pretty intense.
It is. It definitely is. And we've just ran a poll on Geyserville, so it'd be fun to see what people got on that. And then we do have a question coming in, and I'll talk about this real quick. on why Vineyard is on this label. So it's the same Geyserville that we've always made. We put Vineyard on the label this year to really separate it from the town of Geyserville and make sure people understand this is a vineyard and it's not a town wine. Although Geyserville is not an appellation, there could be some confusion there, and we understand that. So we just want to emphasize this is Geyserville Vineyard. So that's why that's on there this year. And then we'll move on to our last wine of the tasting today, and we're doing great on time for 7 wines, but we'll move into the 2023 Estate Cab. And Dave, I'll come over to you for this one and let you take us through.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. So 2023 was very much a vintage for patience. I remember John saying, just sit on your hands, basically. You've got just have patience, wait, it will come around. It was a very late start to the season. 23 broke a pretty vicious 3-year drought, 2021, 22. 23, we got a lot of rain. We were over 80 inches at Montebello. The vine started out a little bit later because of that, and the summer was cool throughout, without a lot of many heat spikes to speak of. And so the vines were just taking their sweet time. And we like that. Those are vintages that can become very elegant as they age out. And that's I think will happen with this Estate Cab. So we also make a Montebello every year. There's a difference between the biggest difference between the Estate Cabernet and our Montebello is that the Estate Cab are the lots that are typically more approachable. It's still balanced, but maybe don't have quite the fruit intensity to age for 20 plus years. And so those lots kind of go into the estate. And this year, all 4 varieties that we grow on the mountain made it into the estate in 2023. So that's, of course, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot. Those are always our 2 biggest percentages. And followed by a little bit of Petit Verdot and then some Cab Franc in 2023. The other thing that we like about this wine is because it is varietally labeled, we have to have at least 75% Cabernet. And in order to stretch it a little bit, this year in 2023, it is exactly 75% Cabernet. So it worked out well that way. I think what you'll find on this wine is that it's elegant. It's starting to drink really well. It will drink for the next 10 or 15 years exceptionally well. If you like older wines, you can age this nicely. Don Reason, may rest in peace, always said, you buy a case of Zin, half a case or a case of Estate Cab and half a case of Montebello. So you can drink the Zins while you're waiting for your Estate Cab. After 10 years, start drinking that. And then in 20 years, start drinking the Montebello. So if you do that every year, that would be great. Anyway, that's kind of it on the Estate Cab. And the Blancs, I will say one thing, though, that everything is tasted blind and evaluated. And so you have kind of 3 tiers of lots from Montebello. There are the lots that we are 99% confident that are going to become Montebello. I'll call those the A lots. There are lots that just don't have the depth and complexity that could make Montebello. I'll call those the C lots. They are the basis of the estate Montebello, but there are usually a majority of lots in between that we don't know. And so that's where the assemblage process comes in. And that's where you build the Montebello so that to make it the most complete and complex wine you can. And then what that does with the estate is it leaves these beautiful wines that sometimes should go into the Montebello, but when we do the blind in and outs, 2 glasses, they just didn't improve the blend, so they don't, and so they end up by default going to estate. So it makes for a wine that is age worthy, but also approachable when it's a few years old.
And oftentimes, Dave, this is kind of the most scarce wine that we make at Ridge, because people understand where this fruit is coming from, and the value ratio involved, and it's usually pretty allocated. It goes extremely fast. I mean, there's good news. We've been talking about this. I'm here 18 years. We've been talking about it the whole time. There's more Cabernet coming. We're finally starting to see that from the open space and some new plantings. Can you touch on that a little bit? Because we're really finally starting to see it.
Yeah, we saw it in 2025, and we'll see more of that in 2026. Although, knock on wood, we haven't got through bloom yet. So, but we're off to a good start this year. But yes, we have that open space where we have open space phase 2 is what we're calling it. But and with phase 3 on the way, eventually they will just merge into open space. Open space phase 2 will get our first full crop this year, or it should be close to full. Can't guarantee full crop, Mike, until next year. And phase 3 is phase 2 is 7.5 acres. So that's a big chunk for us. Phase 3 is another 7 acres, and we're budding that probably the end of May or early June. So that'll be a couple more years, and then that fruit will start coming in. So it's on the way. The train has left the station and it's picking up steam. So yes, there will be more Cabernet and others.
Yeah, which is super exciting. And John, I'll kind of flip over to you for just your thoughts on this and more Cabernet. Obviously, a lot of these young vines are going to end up in estate Cabernet, but I know we've been surprised a little bit by the quality that we're getting out of some of these young vines too.
Yeah, I think that in terms of what are the top contributors to quality if you have a special vineyard. And I always, you can actually, as long as you're managing the crop level in young vines, because they tend to produce quite vigorously when they're young, you can get great quality from young vines. Sure, as the vines get older, it gets that much better. But I think if you have the right soil, if you have the right microclimate, if you're planting the right grapes, right clones, right rootstock, then if you have those conditions right, you can actually get really, really good quality out of young vines.
Yeah, and you're certainly seeing it take place here for sure. Excellent. Well, we're kind of just approaching the top of the hour, so I want to be mindful of the time. We just looking at the participants, it looks like we had our largest audience ever join us today. So thank you all so much for spending an hour with us and tasting through the spring releases. We'll certainly look forward to seeing you again in the fall with those wines, and happy selling out there. We're here for anything you need. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah.